In this session, we'll be adding network devices to our ISE configuration. Network devices are pretty vital to the general operation of ISE as a Radius server. The network access devices will be configured as Radius clients, and as a Radius client, that network access device is interacting with endpoints on behalf of things like 802.1x authentication, for example. Alright, before we actually add the network devices themselves, let's add groups that these network devices will be members of. The network device groups create some better organization around the devices that we'll create here. Many organizations have quite a handful of network devices that they're utilizing. And then these creations are also matchable components within an authorization policy, for example. So these group names, we can match against them. Okay, I've selected all device types here. This just makes it a little easier, as we'll see when I do the add button, that checked box becomes the parent group. I can always reselect a different parent group if needed. And we'll add a device group for our wired access switches. And add one for our wireless environment. And then in a similar fashion, locations in addition or as an alternate to a particular network device type, we can add or match to the particular location that device is physically located at. Alright, so now as we add network devices, which we'll go ahead and move into now, we can add that network device into a particular location and device type. Again, we can utilize that capability for policy matching later on. We'll add our wired switch. And a reachable IP address. Your alternate for a single host IP address is to be able to provide a range of addresses. Might be able to group multiple network access devices up in such a fashion to be able to match that. Down below here, we'll leave this intact, but open it up very quickly. The device profile here refers to vendor-specific attributes that obviously specific to those particular manufacturers. You can see Cisco's added in a good handful of other vendors and their vendor-specific attribute sets and device profiles. The ones that are not on this list, you can manually add yourself, create your own vendor-specific attribute profile or profile VSA set, and you'll find good community support at Cisco's website for the likewise for other vendors that are not on this list. And we have our locations that we can put the device into and the device type. And then lastly, we'll want to set this up for Radius communication. Of course, ISE is our Radius server. This will be the Radius client peering information. Notice we've got the opportunity to manipulate and configure other settings for this network device, including TACACS and SNMP, and of course TrustSec. Check the box to open that drawer and supply a shared secret key that of course needs to be matched with the network device and its configuration. And then we'll save this and submit this network device. Before we add the WLAN controller, let's double check its configuration. First off, just a quick review. The WLAN controller and its associated access point have multiple WLAN SSIDs configured, and you'll notice that these are all currently disabled. So let's get these WLANs activated. In addition, we'll verify our radius configuration on the WLAN controller. You can see that we've got a server configured 10.1.121, which is the IP address of our ISE node that we've configured. For our purposes, and in most purposes, we want minimally this support with ISE as a radius server to support network user authentication, and as an option to be able to support management. But be aware that usually we're wanting to separate the two things. Management type access, or the very access that I'm performing right now as I browse into the WLAN controller, I'll not want to support radius authentication for that management access, and I'll disable that here. The other configuration for accounting, and we're supporting that for network user to our ISE node. Lastly, we'll just double check with wireless. This is a list of our current active access points. We see single active access point, and its admin status is currently enabled. Back to ISE, let's add that WLAN controller. And it will be in HQ as well, but its device type is wireless. And then likewise the radius configuration. And we'll verify that password there and save our configuration. Okay, just in a quick review, we can see that we've got two network devices added to our ISE configuration. They're both built by Cisco, and thus using the Cisco profile of vendor specific attributes for those vendor devices. We can see the locations and device types have been added, and these network devices are pretty well ready to go. At this point, for configuration aspect, we've got all the basic underpinnings in place for ISE now, where it's active and manageable. It's been integrated with Active Directory as an external identity source, and we validated that configuration. And now we've got network devices added. Next step is to create some authentication and authorization policy to support endpoint devices utilizing these network devices.